The Missouri is the longest river in the country, winding down from its source in the Rocky Mountains of Montana all the way to its confluence with the Mississippi River near St. Louis. Although it flows for over 2,500 miles, some of its most captivating stories took place in the forests, farms, and towns that stand watch over the last 100 miles of its journey through the Missouri River Valley.
I love mythic stories and mythical qualities and big statements and heroic figures. I was born in Missouri, went to school in New Mexico, and then on to California. And then came back to this area and rediscovered the beauty of the landscape. I'd love to introduce figures into those landscapes, and to do that, you need a story to tell.
And there are 1,000 stories to tell, so many of them witnessed by the bur oak trees that thrive in the rich river bottomland. Starting life as the largest acorn in North America and growing to have a trunk that measures 5 to 7 feet in diameter, they were used for centuries as landmarks due to their massive size and lifespan of up to 400 years. Some of these trees that are alive today were already standing tall when the Osage and Missouri tribes hunted or farmed nearby. They stood as the Missouri River Valley experienced events and changes felt by the country as a whole. The passage of Lewis and Clark, mass immigration bringing new cultures, the arrival of steamboats and railroads, the heartbreak of war, devastating natural disasters, and triumphs of human innovation. Lately, these living monuments have silently presided over efforts to restore and preserve the land, wildlife, and river that had played such an integral role in the success of human settlement. The bur oak trees of the Missouri River Valley mark the passage of time in one small corner of the country, while pointing towards the stories that shaped a nation. Over 2 centuries before St. Louis became the center for fur trade in 1764, French trappers and traders, also known as voyageurs, were pushing the known boundaries of their new world as they worked and explored from Canada to the Missouri River Valley, establishing trading posts and forts along the way. Historian Crosby Brown discovered the remnants of one of these forts, and after months of archaeology and years of research and restoration, now has the fort open as a living history museum high on a bluff overlooking the Missouri. Although the fort gives an incredible glimpse into the life of a French trader, his Native American wife, and their son, the voyageurs who came to the fort lived most of their lives in the wilds, building trust with the tribes they had traded, traveled, and sometimes lived with.
They weren't looking for gold. They weren't looking for the fountain of youth. These were mostly individual guys who loved the wilderness, who loved the lifestyle, and integrating with the Indians as they went, they learned how to live in the wilderness in North America.
One way to survive the freezing temperatures on the river in winter was to make capes, gloves, and hats from the skins of the black bears who used to roam in abundance throughout the Missouri River Valley.
We don't have winters like that anymore. Oh no. And these guys are in 1, 2, 3 feet of water out here trapping beaver, wet to above the knees.
Yeah.
Oh.
One of the greatest skills the Native Americans shared with the voyageurs was the art of making a canoe that would navigate the shallow, wide Missouri River.
The word Missouri, it's a Siouan dialect word which means men of or men who use long canoes, because the Missouri tribe living on this river used 20, 30, and 40-foot long ones.
They could move a lot of goods and people on those up and down this river. The canoes were really versatile, and they could get into different kinds of water, different kinds of current.
So iconic was this tribe and their impressive canoes that they became the namesake for both the river and the state.
When I think about the heart of the culture of Missouri, one of the things that stands out to me is that people love to go on float trips. You know, they love to go paddling, they love rivers and lakes. It's basically like the people with big canoes. Always has been.
As the years passed, several French families settled near this fort into a small farming community they called La Charrette. Poor and on the very edge of civilization as they knew it, the people of La Charrette would witness the first and last chapters of the Great Expedition West.
Well, it's been a long time since we were all in 4th grade and learned about Lewis and Clark. Back in 1804, at the request of Thomas Jefferson, basically head up the Missouri River and try to find an overland route to the Pacific Ocean. And the story basically starts in Missouri.
After securing supplies in St. Louis and making final recruitments in St. Charles, the expedition set off on their adventure, stopping briefly in La Charrette, the last European settlement the group would encounter before they set off into the unknown. The townspeople there gave them a warm send-off, most likely never expecting to see them again. The explorers encountered challenges almost immediately.
2 days after they left St. Charles, May 23rd, they were in the area that was referred to as Tavern Rock.
It's a big, huge shelter cave. Clark stopped off and visited that cave. Meanwhile, Lewis said he was going to scale the top of this 300-foot bluff that's there. Got near the top and he started sliding down the bluff, and according to William Clark, he took his knife and literally saved himself from falling off the edge of it. That's how close it came to being the Clark expedition. Their trip through Missouri, for one thing, the river was just treacherous. In this big, giant 55-foot keel boat they built, turned out to be just absolutely wrong boat to take out on the Missouri River. And within days, the boat started getting hung up on logs. Back then, the current was so fast that it would literally move sandbars. Sandbars would appear and disappear right before your eyes. And the sandbar started farming around the boat, and the boat started swinging around. It swung around 3 times. It started tilting over. The whole crew had to jump out of the boat and hold on to it to keep it from sinking. And those were the kind of experiences that turned that group of engagés and soldiers who were piloting those boats into experienced rivermen. It was really where the crew became a group of men willing, as Clark said, to endure any fatigue for the success of the mission.
It was a big operation. It wasn't uncommon for them to have 45 or more people moving upriver slowly. So there was always at least a dozen hunters out in the wilderness hunting at all times. Lewis was often out exploring.
One of his jobs given to him by Thomas Jefferson was to identify plants and animals that were unknown to science as far as they were concerned. He spent a good portion of the time just walking alone or with his dog. His journals are full of descriptions of plants and animals that he had seen for the first time. Clark would spend more time either on the boat or with the men. They were a good complementary pair. 2 different personalities, 2 different sets of skills and so on, but the 2 of them meshed together very well.
What amazes me when I read the Lewis and Clark journals about Missouri, not only were there numerous mentions of mosquitoes, their second favorite word was bootiful or beautiful. And you got to remember these were a bunch of Kentuckians out here exploring the Wild West at the time, and they were completely awestruck with the beauty of Missouri.
On the way back, they approach La Charrette, and they see dairy cows in the fields, and that told them they were getting close to civilization again.
28 months after bidding them farewell, the inhabitants of La Charrette were in delighted shock as the expedition came back down the river, their eyes having seen the Pacific Ocean.
What's neat about the Missouri River Valley, it's Missouri's best outdoor classroom to study and enjoy the story of Lewis and Clark.
The small settlement of La Charrette eventually disappeared as larger towns were established following the success of Lewis and Clark, but it is honored with a marker in nearby Marthasville, noting its historical significance. The Lewis and Clark Boathouse and Museum in St. Charles houses a replica of the massive keelboat used on the first leg of the journey. Several times a year, the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles and the museum partner to use the boat in reenactments, giving locals and visitors to the area a glimpse into the excitement and uncertainty the expedition must have experienced as they headed up the Missouri River into the unknown.